James Tissot was a 19th century French painter who had quite a life story. Very briefly, in 1885, when he was almost 50 years old, he was a celebrated artist both in France and England, where he had lived for over a decade, painting modern works of everyday life, literature, and portraits. He was academically trained, but was also very well connected with the Impressionists. And then, at age 50, he started to become more spiritual and he decided to radically change his approach to art, both in terms of his subject and his style. While doing research for one of his paintings, he experienced a religious vision in a church which brought him back to the Catholic faith. He started to paint biblical images, and not just a few, a lot of them. And to do that as good as possible, he first traveled extensively through the Middle East, a trip he would repeat a couple of more times over the next decade, so that he could study the landscapes and culture from that area properly. What set his approach apart from the many others who also painted biblical scenes is that Tissot tried to depict the story as accurately as possible, and he was not concerned with dramatizing his works to appeal to an audience. He wanted to create the full narrative, instead of individual paintings which you could sell. That is not to say that the individual works are not great, as there are some real gems among them. So between 1886 and 1894, he created over 350 scenes from the New Testament. He used gouache, a kind of watercolor, to create these scenes, which were focused on the life of Jesus. When he finished his series, it was received with a lot of enthusiasm when exhibited in Paris, London and New York. These scenes were also published in book form, which became a huge success financially, although that had not been his motivation for these works. Instead, Tissot was motivated by the spiritual and educational aspects of painting these works, and he worked very diligently on this project without much time for fun. Having completed his series of the life of Jesus, Tissot turned to the Old Testament, and this project was even more ambitious, starting with a scene of the creation based on the first chapter of the book of Genesis. Using gouache again, Tissot would complete his illustrations for the book of Genesis, followed by Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, and while working in 1902, 6 years into the project, on the sixth book of the Old Testament, the book of Joshua, he suddenly died, leaving this ambitious project unfinished. You can actually buy his illustrated Bibles today, and in the description box below this video, I have put a link to a free online version of the first 6 books of the Old Testament, including all the illustrations that Tissot made for them. Although be careful when going through the book that some of the images are a bit out of place. I wanted to pick out the story of Joseph to give you a good idea about the narrative elements in his work. Joseph was the second youngest and favorite son of Jacob, a story described in Genesis chapters 37 till 50. The first illustration by Tissot about Joseph is the moment the young Joseph, seen at the center, tells his brothers about the dream he had where his brothers bowed down to Joseph. The brothers already didn't like him, and this suggestive story was the limit. They planned their revenge and sold him into slavery, telling their father that Joseph must have died. The young Joseph was brought to Egypt, where he was sold to Potiphar, the captain of Pharaoh's guard. After some trouble with Potiphar's wife, Joseph ends up in prison, and there he met the baker and winemaker of the Pharaoh, who both had a dream that only Joseph could explain. Sometime after the winemaker was released from prison, it was Pharaoh who had a dream that nobody could explain, and the winemaker remembered Joseph, and he was called over to explain the meaning of Pharaoh's dream. The dreams of Pharaoh, here stylistically depicted by Tissot, was about 7 years of abundance, followed by 7 years of famine. Joseph advised the Pharaoh to store the excess in food for the future famine, and he was made governor of Egypt. When the famine finally started, the family of Joseph in Israel was suffering, and his father sent all his brothers, except for the youngest one Benjamin, to Egypt to buy food. They met with Joseph, who pretended he did not recognize them. They had to bring their youngest brother Benjamin from Israel to prove that they were not lying. When they returned, Joseph tricked them by getting Benjamin arrested. When their brother Judah pleaded with him to release Benjamin, Joseph could no longer contain himself, and he finally revealed himself to his brothers. After Pharaoh learned about the presence of Joseph's family, he invited them over to his palace, and later Jacob and all his family would join Joseph in Egypt, where Jacob would stay until his death. Tissot created about double the number of paintings about the story of Joseph than that you have seen so far, but I think you get a pretty good idea of how he focused on all the key moments in the biblical stories and captured them with a focus on being as truthful as possible. Of course, taking into account that he based the people and architecture on what he observed in the late 19th century. Well, I hope you enjoyed this overview of the biblical illustrations by James Tissot. Don't forget to check the link in the description box below to freely access an English version of the first 6 Bible books with all the illustrations by James Tissot. And if you are interested in seeing the original gouache paintings by Tissot, that is also possible, but you will have to visit New York City. Unlike many other series or even pendant works painted in art history, the Old Testament series by Tissot is still intact and visible at the Jewish Museum in New York, and on their website you can find each of Tissot's illustrations in high resolution if you are interested. And the series of works on the life of Jesus is also still complete and visible in the Brooklyn Museum in New York. Let me know if you have visited either of them or perhaps have a printed version of one of his illustrated books. And if you want to support the channel, please hit the thumbs up button, subscribe and hit that notification bell. Thanks for watching.